These are Zentangles. Zentangles are basically sort of free-flowing, organic kinds of patterns and designs. They're often non-objective. Um, Zentangles can be a great way of sort of relaxing through like the soothing quality of like repetitive motions, but also they can create really beautiful images, and it's a good exercise in creativity thinking about how you can create a good variety of patterns. Now, one of the interesting things about Zentangles and patterns like this and structured patterns is patterns can also create a little bit of emphasis and a little bit of value in the artwork. Value is one of the elements of art, and when we talk about value in art, we're talking about what most people would refer to as the shading, the relative lightness and darkness of a hue. And the idea is, as we create Zentangles and other patterns, the more of the white of the paper that shows through, the lighter the pattern is going to look. So for this project, we're going to draw an animal and cover it with Zentangles, and then we are going to try to create value using those patterns. So I started off drawing my owl as a collection of simple shapes. I'm thinking about it in a very cartoon style because I want to have different shapes to fill with my different Zentangle patterns. After I've drawn all of those shapes, I start making that variety of patterns. And as I said, when I create these patterns, I want to create a little bit of value as well. So if I want it to look darker, I'm going to make more black lines closer together, maybe fill in some shapes so that less of the white of the paper is showing through. And when my eye sort of optically blends the black and white, I'm seeing more black, it's going to look like a darker value. If I leave more white space visible, it's going to create a lighter value. But again, one of the other challenges of this is trying to create variety. Even though my entire design is black and white, I'm still creating good variety by having different types of lines, different types of dots, different sizes, different weights of lines, and a range of values through those different patterns. A good strategy can be to think about sort of concentric circles or concentric, in this case, heart shapes. But then I go back and I want to get different weights of lines, so I thicken some areas. I want to repeat similar elements in different ways to create variations on that theme. So I'm going to thicken some lines and have some thinner lines, different weights of lines to help create some contrast. Or I might repeat similar shapes in different areas, but then fill in the space around it. It doesn't have to be black shapes on a white background. It can be white shapes with a black background, or basically coloring the space around those shapes. I might even, instead of making concentric circles or like a more defined shape, I could create a repetition of organic shapes to create the texture of wood grain, or a repetition of dotted and dashed lines to create, again, a wood grain pattern. Spacing those lines out a little bit more creates a lighter value in that area.
Now, with mine, there's a solid argument to be made that leaving the rest of the space white, like the sky white, would work better for the design to create sort of a spot where the eye can rest, to sort of have a stark contrast between the patterned and the unpatterned areas. I decided to push this even further by coloring in the sky using sort of an abstracted starry night type sky where I've got concentric circles and the broken up lines get more and more dense, closer and closer together, so there's more and more ink covering the paper as it gets farther away from those stars, or creating variations in the relative darkness or the value that way. Now, as I said, you do not necessarily have to do that on every inch of your paper. There's a solid argument to be made that in some designs it works better to leave some of the negative space empty to create contrast with all of the patterns that are going on within the design so it doesn't become overwhelming or sort of cluttered visually. You're going to make the choices on what's best for your design. But what I want to see in your drawing is an animal covered in Zentangles that help to create a range of values through that variety of patterns.